Okay, let's continue our discussion here as we talk about these the challenges that the kids are going to face. We need to, as teachers, provide explicit instruction and guidance with new material. We don't do enough explicit instruction. We just assume that because we're telling them, they're getting it. That doesn't always move. That doesn't always do the job. When we present new material and we need to gradually then move into the background as the child begins to master the concept, but we always keep that safety net there for them. We need to make sure that we keep the safety net as so they can work independently of us. As sad as it is, you want your kids to be able to do what you ask them to do if you're not even there. So it becomes a piece that is a good thing, and then it's going to break your heart because they're going to be able to work with some of these things without you, and then you raise the bar again. Students are more dedicated to completing a task if they believe they can meet the challenge. We don't want to make the challenge too tough, but we need to make it a true challenge so that they can rise to the challenge. What I have found over the years, and it's been said more and all the time with research and whatever, if we raise the bar and if we challenge our students, they will rise to the challenge if they think they can do it. We have to make sure that we set the bar to the point that they can do it. We don't want to set it too high. Well, literacy lessons, I can't tell you this enough. They have to be relevant and they have to work for what they want to do. That's why I bring in the games and stuff for so you can see. That's why I sent you on a scavenger hunt. So you can see that this stuff is based in reality. You don't need to sit them down with a pencil and a bunch of worksheets to get the lesson across to them. You can have them actually working on things. They need to know why they're doing learning a particular skill. They need to know why they're doing what it is you want them to do. I know so many times I would ask, or someone in my class would say, why do we have to do this? And the teacher would say, because it's in the book, or because I said so. My dad would always say that. I'd ask him, well, why do I have to do this? Because I said so. That's not okay, well, my dad ruled the house with an iron fist. And so we did it because I didn't want to hear the hollering if we didn't. But children need to know why they're learning a skill. Now, can you make it how it's going to be useful to them in real life? Well, so we teach them nouns, common and proper nouns. How is that going to be useful to them in real life? Well, we use nouns all the time, but some of this stuff is so obscure that it's hard to find a real life example. But they need to know that what they're doing is worth their time, and that's one of the things I think teachers do too much is they teach lessons because they're in the book, whether they're really worth the kids time or not, or your instructional minutes. Sometimes maybe yes, maybe no. We need to make sure that it's worth not only your time but theirs as well. And they need to read and write for authentic purposes. I used to have my kids at Christmas time, they're in second grade, their Christmas present to their parents was we put together a cookbook. But the caveat with it was the kids couldn't ask for a recipe. They had to make up the recipe on their own. And parents looked forward to those every year because they were a hoot. Some of them had, I mean, ridiculous temperatures and times in the oven, and they were making this or that or something else. And it was just a hoot. But they did it and they were so proud of it. They were so proud of those cookbooks. And I've had parents to this day say, I still have the cookbook that so and so made. And they love to look at that. But it was a real life experience for them. Whenever possible, the children's audience should go that beyond that of the teacher. If you can have them them share with their classmates or other people in the school. Have them take what they're doing to a different classroom and read what they've done, or have them share reading with them. My second graders used to go across the hall on Friday afternoons and read to the kindergartners. They loved that. The kindergarten looked so forward to that. And my kids loved it because they thought they were the big kids, because those were just babies. They were in kindergarten, and my kids were the big kids because on our floor it was kindergarten, first and second graders. So my little second graders thought, they were the big shots there. The children can see that learning is much more than just getting a grade. They can see that because they're learning, they can share that with somebody else or with other kids. And they see that reading and writing serves a purpose beyond the classroom. They can go and they can take their reading and writing with to somebody else, and the motivation increases. Let me tell you, when my kids, they'd have to choose a book to read to their kindergarten pal, they had to practice that book. They had to be able to read that book, and they would practice in the classroom with each other from time to time. And so when they went to read to the kindergarten kids, they could do it without any flaws or very few. And those kindergartners looked at them so adoringly, and they just thought they were just such big shots, because then it was time on Friday afternoon. They were going to go teach the kindergartners. So they just thought that they were really, really cool. Children have the opportunity to learn in social situations. This is Vygotsky at his finest, right here. They need to with, collaborate with teachers, with their peers, with parents. If you can get retired people to come in and help, they love that. The kids like to work with them. The grandparents or the retirees enjoy that. And the retirees, it gives them something to do, gives them a reason to get up in the morning, and they're doing such a cool thing, and they like it. Learning becomes more of a collective process, and the responsibility for learning is shared among the students, which lessens the fear of failure. You have to set up your classroom for this to work as a risk-free environment. There is no bullying, there's no name calling, there is no sarcastic comments, there are none of that. There's none of that. It has to be a workable piece. When students complete the task at hand, they must consider it a success. They have to be successful. You have to set the bar high enough that it's a bit of a challenge, but they have to be able to meet the challenge and be a success with it, or they're going to quit. They and those successes need to be noted in some way, shape, or form. If you have little note cards or little things and send notes home or whatever, if you're going to call a child's parents when they're naughty, call them when they've done something really good too. Don't just wait for the phone call when you have to call a parent to dress a child down. Call the parent if you're going to do that, or email or text them, or use Class Dojo or whatever you're using to note their successes as well, not just their not just their failures. We also need to establish good reading habits. They need to have frequent opportunities to read texts independently. They need to read with you. They need to read by themselves. They need to read to each other. They need to read high quality literature. That doesn't mean every book has to be high quality literature. Yeah, they could read junk too, but not all the time. They need to read widely across multiple genres, and greater difficulty and lesser difficulty. They can read across whatever you want them to read and however you want them to do it. Good writing habits are also established when they have frequent opportunities. Reading and writing are the flip side of the same coin. If they're reading a lot, they need to be writing a lot. You need to balance your literacy. If you're teaching phonics, we talked about this. If you're teaching phonics, you also need to be teaching context clues. If they are reading, they need to be writing. We need to be putting these two things together. If they're reading by themselves, they need to be reading in pairs. They need to be reading in groups. We need to balance the literacy across the room. and across the curriculum. They need balance. We need to set up literacy centers. They need to have places where they can have centers that foster interest in reading and writing. I used to have one of my literacy centers was a listening center, and at that time we had cassette tapes with the stories on them, and I had a listening center, and they could choose a book, and then they would listen and they'd follow along with the book, not to answer questions at the end, just to listen for the enjoyment of listening to someone who read the story well. It was kind of a read aloud, but they were just listening through their headphones. We need to set up these literacy centers around your room. Now, I will tell you, when you do this, you set up these literacy centers, and I can't decide. Oh, my cat's is in and out here. When you set up these literacy centers, it takes a lot of classroom management. It takes a lot of planning to do these kinds of things. So you're going to have to be solid in your classroom management, and you're going to have to be solid in your planning, in your classroom planning, and how you're going to do this. Because if you have groups working at centers, whether they're working at one specific center every day of the week and then rotating, or they're rotating daily from one center to another while you're working with another group. However you set it up, it takes a tremendous amount of planning, coordination, and patience, let me tell you. Centers in these literacy centers, these children have choices. They can collaborate. They go from one place to another. They have, some of them are more challenging than others. Maybe they're all going to be running around the same idea with the same, if you're working, for instance, if you're working on um, putting stories in order, you're going to have your literacy centers set up for that week or however long you're working on that, doing activities to put things in order in a story. What comes first? What comes next? What comes after that? You may also have a center set up that you're looking at the words. In the first place, this blah blah blah. Then after that, or find the words and let them work together in a collaborative manner to help each other succeed, and then to teach them that they can do something. They can do these things. Some of these centers are more difficult. Some of them are not so difficult, but you have to set them up so they can be successful. Children in classrooms with literature collections read and look at books 50% more often than children in classrooms without those collections. You have to make sure that as you are moving into your own classroom, you have books for the children in the classroom. They don't have to leave the classroom to go to the school library. The books are in the classroom that they can look at. I will tell you from experience, when you read a book to the class as a read aloud, that book may have sat in your classroom library for weeks and nobody looked at it. The minute you pick it up and read it as a read aloud, you are going to have your kids, they're going to pick it up and it's going to be read and read and reread and reread and reread and reread all around the room, because they have had it modeled for them. They've heard it, they know what it is, they liked it, they think it's cool. One of the things that I would caution you is, when you have your kids reading books, they need to learn that they can read for pleasure, that not every time they read a book, you're going to quiz them on it, or that there's going to be an activity that's associated with it, that they could do something if they wanted to with that book, but they don't have to. They can just read for pleasure. We have to get these kids reading for more than just their nose in a textbook all the time, because the teacher says that's what you have to do. And we're going to stop with this one right here because I'm running up against the clock again. So I will talk at you a little bit later.